And maybe we won't have so many lawsuits and people gumming up the works anymore. And so many people from the legal industry running for Congress, but nevertheless, we have these industries that have been targeted, absolutely targeted. We're in a lot of people's sights, and we've got a government that's refused to acknowledge that, absolutely refused to acknowledge it, and develop a strategy in order to counter it. And all we've done in the last 10 years especially is just allow these jobs to hemorrhage, just to disappear, to leave our country, and really devastate much of our country. I was just asked about Youngstown, and I really do believe that Youngstown, the rest of the country, this wave that was building in Youngstown has now crashed throughout the rest of the country. And if you don't have wealth in this part of the country, if you're not generating wealth in this part of the country, then you're not going to have wealth being generated in places like Vegas and Orlando and even LA. The coasts are going to be impacted as well, because you just need to have this huge apparatus of creating wealth in our country. I think it's really important for all of us to get tuned in, to understand what's happening on a national level, and to look at such things as the priorities of our federal government, and to try to engage with them and try to make sure that they understand the importance of the issues that are most important to Americans. So, for instance, the President talked about the Jobs Act, the Jobs for Main Street Act, and last night. And he got a big round of applause because the Democrats on December 16th passed another jobs stimulation bill. They're going to try to stimulate more jobs. And that bill passed. It passed by 217 to 212 votes. I asked this morning for a show of hands of people who've actually gone online to read what was in the bill, to see whether or not this was actually, from your perspective, this is going to result in jobs. And so, I'm not going to ask that, I'm not going to embarrass you, but these are the sorts of things that you as a citizenry need to look at. This is your money. This is their strategy for developing jobs. The economic stimulus bill last year that passed in February was $787 billion to stimulate jobs. And the Democrats, who hadn't been in power, passed that bill. They thought, problem solved, let's move on to health care. Well, I read that stimulus bill. I don't know if any of you read the stimulus bill. I read the stimulus bill over the course of the weekend. My wife thought I was going insane because it's like, there are no jobs in the stimulus bill. This is not a jobs bill. I don't know what it is, but it's just not a jobs bill. So it's good, it's really important for you to read these bills, to look at them, to go online, to read the health care bill, and form your own opinion of these, and then to let people know what you really think. This latest jobs bill, there's, and I'm not sure if this creates jobs or what, but $41 billion for unemployment insurance, $27 billion for the Federal Highway Administration, $23 billion for the match for payments to doctors program, $23 billion for teachers, $12 billion for COBRA, $6 billion for the Federal Transit Administration, $2.3 billion for the child tax credit, $1.2 billion for law enforcement, $1 billion for HUD Indian housing, $75 billion for hazardous fuels reduction, program run by the Forest Service. So this is their idea of creating jobs. This is their idea of creating jobs. That's your money. You come to your conclusion. My conclusion is I don't see a job there. I just see more money being spent. There might be a few, but that ain't going to do it, folks. We in this country have to generate tens of millions of jobs. And the government can't hire anybody. In fact, the government's going broke. And because they're trying to stimulate jobs that are government jobs. And you have to start really stimulating jobs that are actually jobs of people making the products that Americans are buying. We're under this false impression that a lot of these industries and a lot of these technologies and a lot of these products, we hear from the economists that they are buggy whip industries. Now, the buggy whip industry is an industry that it was no longer in demand. Buggy whips were no longer in demand, so why do you need buggy whips or typewriters? But these industries are not buggy whip industries. The industries that we're losing, we're still buying all these products. We still buy clothes and eyeglasses and microphones and chairs and lights and cell phones and computers, printed circuit boards and ceramic tile. Hearing aids. We don't make any hearing aids in the United States anymore. And it's one industry after another. And we need to be making sure that the people who run our government understand that the way you create jobs in this country, and they don't get it yet, the way you create jobs in this country is you create incentives for our companies, not only our companies, any company, any foreign company that wants to sell here, to set up production, to hire Americans to make the products that Americans buy. Yet, all of the government policies that I've reported on, including this latest jobs bill, have done the exact opposite of that. They have pretty much fallen into the belief that, and it's an economic theory, that the way to create jobs is to create demand and to increase consumption. And so if we give Americans money, if we put money in their pockets, they're going to spend the money, and it's going to increase jobs in the United States. And we've spent the last 10 years doing this and racking up record deficits. We've not spent 1 minute trying to create the incentives to counter all the other incentives that all the foreign competition is given their manufacturers and our manufacturers. Instead, we've had trillion-dollar tax cuts. We had 2 of them with George Bush. The first one was because he thought that the federal government shouldn't be collecting tax revenues from Americans when there was already surplus. He said, give back the surplus to Americans. And then the economy did not seem to be revived shortly after that, so he created another tax cut to stimulate the economy. There was the American Jobs Creation Act of 2004. It allowed companies to repatriate all their profits, and it was called the American Jobs Creation Act. And allowed companies to repatriate their profits from overseas operations. They thought, okay, we'll bring all this money back and we're going to create jobs. In 2008, there was another economic stimulus act. And you might remember this. You may have received a check for $600, or if you're filing jointly, you got a check for $1,200. Just in the mail, it's $156 million. They decided to send everybody a check out of the blue. And that was supposed to stimulate the economy. We've had a decade of fighting wars. Remember how everyone used to say that a war was an economic stimulus? We've spent a tremendous amount of money fighting wars. That should have been reviving the economy. There should be the unemployment rate should be so low because we're spending so much money on this industrial complex, the military-industrial complex, to make everything that's required to fight a war in a desert. Fighting a war in a desert is expensive because sand just completely ruins most of your mechanical devices, so you constantly replace it. Then we've had a decade, really, of really low interest rates. And Americans borrowed like crazy, and they had home equity loans, and they spent money like crazy. So what do we have to show for it?